Hi everyone, very interesting information again today. I don't even know where to start. There's so much about what will happen in Iceland and what is happening in Iceland. There's statements from Thorvalds, and that is very interesting. We will hear a statement from one of the CEOs of the fish processing plants inside of Grindavik, and we will look, of course, what the lagoonies are doing and what about the access to the lagoon. That is something that is part of the new risk assessment of the Icelandic Meteorological Office, and I think they have twisted this a little bit. We will talk about this, guys. We're waiting for the next event to happen. We have 14 million cubic meters in that magma chamber underneath the Blue Lagoon, where we have the lagoonies swimming, getting their facials and having a relaxing spa day. Because what could happen with a 14 million cubic meter full magma chamber underneath you in a depth of around 4 to 5 kilometers only? That is filling up, and that will cause probably the next event, magma intrusion or eruption, very, very soon. So let's start with the Icelandic Meteorological Office first. What are they saying? What is today's update? Of course, they're saying there is an increased probability of a new magma flow and another eruption in the coming days. So they went as far as yesterday. They said we will see something in the next 24 hours. And they're saying it's most likely to erupt in the Sutnúks crater series. So that is where the last few eruptions have been, basically along that dike that has formed on November 10th. It's a 15-kilometer long dike, but it's basically, if you have the lagoonies here, you draw a line over the access road Grindavik Vegur, and then you have the Sutnúka crater series, roughly 4.5 kilometers away from the lagoonies. And there we have seen the eruptions, some more south towards Grindavik. January, it was more like to the southeast of that crater series. That was a little bit unusual. And this was the one that opened a second surprise fissure and burned down 3 homes. So it has been rumbling. You have to look at the earthquake swarms that we have seen in the last few days. The earthquakes were gradually increasing, so basically doubling from day to day. But it is interesting when you see where these earthquake swarms are, because it could tell you that there's maybe something on the move. Because if magma is on the move from the magma chamber, depending on where it goes, if it has to form a new tunnel or not, it is rumbling, right? If it will go into a new area, it'll rumble way more because it has to grind new tunnels. But they're saying, since they think it'll go where it has been going before, the way of least resistance is in that area. That's why there will not be much rumbling, and therefore short to no warning time. So it will be poof, eruption, hello, I'm here, right? So new risk assessment, which is kind of interesting, I find. I'm not so sure that I agree with this risk assessment. Let me know what you think, guys. We'll get to this in a minute. So they're saying that little has changed since the eruption officially ended yesterday. That was the eruption that started on March 16th and has been surprisingly lasting so long. Nothing has changed. The land keeps rising. That means the magma chamber is still filling up. So same rate as before. So how much further can this magma chamber stretch? Because the amount that we have added to that magma chamber has reached the upper limit. So they said something always happened when the magma chamber had a fill amount between 8 and 13 million cubic meters. Now we're 14 million cubic meters. But it could be from experience from other eruptions that had, we've had a few eruptions or intrusions, and the more we have of them, they're saying the more power is needed to send out the next event. Well, we're not so sure, because something was sent out on March 2nd. That was a small intrusion, which was a little bit unusual for that system. But they're already saying the system is behaving very unusual right now, and it seems to change. So it seems to move away from this kind of predictable behavior that it had developed in the previous eruptions, like 3 to 4 weeks, next event, land subsiding, eruption stops, land rise keeps going. This time land rise kept going right away, although we still had an eruption going. So they say there is quite a lot of uncertainty as to when we will have sufficient pressure in the magma chamber to initiate a new magma flow, and what it needs to for magma to reach the surface. And then have a look at this graph. They have updated this graph. And interesting is the blue line. We have to talk about this a little more. Some of you mentioned that in my last video. So that is how the magma chamber was filling up until we saw the eruption on December 18th. So that was basically the first eruption that we have seen. After that, magma dike had formed. So the magma dike, the magma intrusion, this 15-kilometer long dike that has formed on November 10th, that has triggered the initial evacuation of Grindavik. That's the purple line with the purple square. A square is always intrusion, magma didn't reach the surface, and a star is always there was an eruption. And the red line on the bottom that gradually increases and has a round circle, that's where we are right now. So we're basically where we were, if you look at the green line, where we were before the January eruption. And then the yellow line, that's even less, right? That's the February eruption. And then we have that little intrusion, the light blue line that happened on March 2nd. And then the orange line, that is when it erupted on March 16th. So that is interesting in my opinion, right? It didn't take much then to cause this long-lasting eruption. So where we are right now, the pressure is building up. Will it go as high as it did in the December eruption? And then the question is, well, what to expect? Will it really be such a big like boof bang with so much coming out? If you compare it to the December eruption wasn't really that bad compared to the other ones where there was so much lava flow, so fast, so liquid, going over the access road, Grindavik, that's the access road that basically goes north-south for the lagoonies to access the Blue Lagoon, but also for people to access Grindavik. That road has been flown over twice. So, and twice where we see like directly at the doorsteps of Grindavik. So that's why I'm a little bit wondering what they're saying about that road and how safe it is to be on that road. So let's have a look at their updated hazard map. So they have downgraded the risk in the zone 3, basically. Zone 3, that's the Sutnuka crater series. That's where we have seen all the current eruptions happening. And of course, the eruption has ended. That's why they have downgraded the risk. But we're right before the next one, right? So is it really safer there now? Yeah, there's less risk of gas pollution right now. Maybe that's the case. But I would still keep it purple because it can erupt without warning there at any time. But this is one part. But let's talk about what they're saying about the road. They say, since the area between Stora Skogfell and Hagafell, the Earth's crust is heavily cracked and damaged by all these openings, by all these eruptions, they think that magma has an easy way to come up in that area again. And that's why not much seismic activity. That's why no warning. Is that a reason to downgrade the hazard risk? I'm not sure, right? They're saying the warning for the new eruption can therefore be very short or even non-existent. And they're saying it's therefore very dangerous to be on the road in zone 3 as defined on the hazard map. And I want to zoom in here. I want you to look at zone 3. So this is the road here, Grindavik. You see it in that little square. So it goes through zone 1 where we have the Swartsengi power plant and the Blue Lagoon. And they're talking about basically the area that starts at Mount Thorbjorn and goes into Grindavik. That's very dangerous there. And we see the lava has crossed the road there. But, you know, it also has crossed the road in zone 1, as we can see. And they're very quickly and blocking people from getting out. Everyone did get out in time, thankfully. But, you know, so it's safe to be in that little part, and then it's not safe to be on it just a little bit further south. Why would that be? Because in my opinion, and that's just my opinion, guys, let me know what you're thinking. That little square there that we're looking at, that's the access road for the lagoonies. So if they said it's not safe to be on the road in that little square there as well, which is basically parallel to the eruption area, then they would have to close down that exciting spa experience. Because how can people get there if it's officially so unsafe, right? So I think that's, again, a little trick to keep that place open to the last minute, to keep raking the money in, to haul in the tourists. And I really dislike that. I hate it. I have to say, now that they know, again, something so imminent, close the thing down. But, you know, and it is in a hazard area. So the civil defense and the police of Sudurn have said, stay out of the hazard areas, stay out. But obviously, that's not valid for the Blue Lagoon. That has the magma chamber right underneath. And the scientists do not rule out that it could come up right there. They're saying, well, there would be more warning because it needs to grind through the crust, so 4 to 7 hours warning. But that crust of that magma chamber, by expanding and subsiding and expanding and subsiding, that crust gets weaker too, so that it's easier for the magma. I'm not saying that this is going to be the next event, but you know, since there is a risk, I just wouldn't take it. It's crazy. So of course, they're very, very worried about Grindavik. That new fast liquid lava flow could go over the defense walls and flow right into town, because the current eruption that has just ended has altered the landscape. The lava carpet that has spread out there is at least 16 meters high, in some areas higher than that, definitely higher than the defense walls that they built and even increased around Grindavik, especially in the northeastern part. The lava had already breached the defense walls, and now they started on Monday to build a second row of defense walls in this area that is at risk. So should it breach the first defense wall, there's a second defense wall that can save it. And they have made an announcement today that they think it'll take about 2 to 3 weeks to finish these new defense walls. They're saying there's around the clock 30 to 35 people at works in day shifts, a little fewer on the night shifts, and that they're basically really not taking many days off. And they're saying that, okay, after Easter, the team started taking a 2-day weekend off, which they really deserve. These guys are heroes. And then previously, they only had like Sundays off, right? Because they were working against the clock, and they're working against the clock now because something can happen at any second, basically, so to speak. So it is estimated that they will build this defense wall around 5 meters high, and it will have a length of around 800 meters to 1 kilometer. What is Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson, a professor of volcanology at the University of Iceland, saying about the eruption that just ended yesterday? He thinks it's very remarkable how long this eruption was able to go at full force compared to how little it was then producing in the last few days. Because the Icelandic MET Office said it's probably only 1 cubic meter per second that it only just was spilling out there. And he also notes that what we see in the magma chamber under the Blue Lagoon in Swartsengi right now, aside from when the first eruption started, never since then have we seen it filled up that much. So one thing that Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson says, that the land rise, the speed of the land rise, and you see this in the curve. The curve is, the line is flatter than the other ones, has not been that at that high speed like we have seen it at the other eruptions. Of course, because something was flowing out in the eruption. I guess now we will have to wait and see if the speed of the land rise is increasing now that the eruption area is clogged up again. So he thinks, you know, before we can see the next event, the question is whether there will be enough pressure built up for them to send out the magma on its way for another eruption, or maybe it will all blow over and nothing's going to happen, which I don't think so. They ask him, do you think it's likely that it will not erupt again? He has said before, maybe when this eruption stops, this could be at the end of it, right? While others are saying the Reykjanes Peninsula has woken up, this can last for centuries. But he thought once this eruption stops, it's the end for the system in that area. He doesn't really give an answer to this question. He says, well, if there is another magma run or eruption, he thinks it's most likely that it will break out in the same areas as before, like southeast of Stora Skogfell. The progress can be similar to what it has been in the previous eruptions. That's what he says. And he says that there could be a little panic by the people at the beginning because it could erupt with a lot of force. But then he thinks the eruption would probably die down very, very quickly because he still thinks the amount of magma in the magma chamber that has accumulated there is very small. So interesting, right? There was even less magma in the chamber when the March 16th eruption started, and it did last for so long. So he says in the previous eruption, the most amount of magma came out of the eruption site in the first 5 to 6 hours, and then it was gradually dying down. And he thinks that this is a similar scenario that could happen for the next event that we're all waiting for. He thinks overall these eruptions are all low power. Yeah, but you know, the lava's flowing fast, right? So again, it's a lot of uncertainty and nobody can tell for sure. It's just a guessing game, but that volcanic system might give us another surprise like it did in January when it erupted so close to Grindavik and burned down 3 homes. So who knows, maybe it will just open up the current vent that just closed down and send more lava. Then it will be critical for Grindavik, and then we have to see if the defense walls, how far they got with their current construction, if those defense walls will hold. So Vizier, it's a fish processing company in Grindavik, and their CEO has made an announcement today, which I think is interesting to listen to. It's not a long one, but I'll read it to you guys. He says it's 6 months of disasters and heroics. And so it says, today, the 10th of May marks the 6-month anniversary of the disastrous seismic activities that began with earthquakes and ground deformations in Grindavik. The day that we were evacuated from our homes into uncertainty with no end in sight. In the following 4 months, we had 4 volcanic eruptions around our town. And at the time this is written, we are all holding our breath and waiting for the 5th one. The month of April was the first month since October that Mother Nature didn't slap us with powerful natural disasters. But there is another force that has appeared to balance the unrelenting destructive power. It is the people of the town. Through perseverance and fortitude, they have shown that they are capable, what they are capable of. Where there has been some hope of keeping operations going, it has been done. When the value of companies or the municipality had to be protected, people have shown up. Often the interest of the businesses and the community have been placed above personal interests. People do heroic things every day, both at work and to survive the chaos of sudden relocations. Every effort is made to minimize harm to the children. That is the most challenging task. Gratitude is at the top of my mind when I think of my colleagues, and I have faith that the Almighty God will accompany us on the journey of the changes we are currently experiencing. Let's be patient with the project and be as careful as possible in the difficult conditions we are dealing with. But above all, let's be kind and considerate to each other. Petua Hafstein Palsson. I close my video with this, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave it a like and check out my video about the terrible, devastating floods in Brazil, the worst floods that the country has ever had. It's absolutely devastating. The link is in the end screen, guys. Thanks so much for watching. See you then. Bye-bye.